Great to be here in Cologne this afternoon. Yes, as you said, I'm from London. My company is Medical Realities. I studied medical realities with my business partner, Professor Shafi Ahmed, about 2.5 years ago. We're going to be talking basically about the future of medical training and education. But because we're talking about medicine, because that's my company speciality, that doesn't actually mean it stops and starts there, because the same can be said that the things that we're doing for medical training can be used for training and education about anything and anywhere. I'm really passionate about what we do. And one of the reasons I'm passionate about what we do is that there's a huge problem in the world, and it's a hidden problem. 2/3 of the world's population don't have access to safe or affordable surgery. That's over 5 billion people. In order to solve that problem right now, we need an extra 2.2 million surgeons. Even in the developing world, it's becoming a problem, because as we're living longer, unfortunately, one of the side effects of living longer is that we're going to have surgery, and probably major surgery at some point in our lives. And so every year now, in the developed world, there's a need for 143 million more operations year on year. The solution that we came up with, and this actually is Shafi wearing a VR headset. He's not actually performing surgery in VR, well, not yet. That's just a metaphor of what we're doing. And we've created what we call the medical realities solution. And part of that medical realities solution is to create a platform, because the platform actually enables us to use lots of different new technologies and bring them all together. We started off with VR. We started off with relatively simple VR, 360-degree videoing of operations given by top surgeons. That's almost the simplest virtual reality you can get. But then we add to that now. We add more things. We add lots of different camera feeds. Sometimes we even add camera feeds from inside the patient as the operation's happening. But we also add animation. We also add hotspots, CT scans, MRI scans, X-rays, you name it. And when we started off, we added another thing to what we were doing, which was a sort of question and answer. It's a very simple question and answer thing that was actually run by chatbots. And the idea was we wanted to know how well the medical students that were watching our material were responding and how well it was working. So we asked them questions before they saw an operation and after they saw an operation, so we could gauge what they'd learned and how we had to change what we were doing to make it more effective and better. And we're adding lots of other things, but I'll tell you about that a bit later on. This is a still from one of the operations. This is a laparoscopic operation that's taking place. Laparoscopic operation is sometimes referred to as keyhole surgery. There are basically 3 types of surgery now. There's the original surgery, which is what's called open surgery, where you cut open and the surgeon does his marvelous work and then sews you back up again. Then laparoscopic surgery came along, and that's using equipment that actually goes into the patient, but only in a small way. And there's a camera that goes in with the equipment, and the surgeon is actually manipulating inside the patient and looking at a screen to make sure what he's doing is correct. The hotspots there can be turned on and off. The hotspots there are in virtual reality, so that when you look around and you want to find out something particular, in this case, that hotspot there would be the name of that surgeon and the background of that surgeon. Because we have to remember that when we're creating something in virtual reality, one of the great things that we don't have to do, we don't have to treat it like a video. It's not a linear thing. It doesn't have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's completely non-linear. And we can add layers and layers and layers. because we have to remember that the viewer in virtual reality can look wherever they want. They become the camera, they become the director, they become the editor. And that also means that they can actually, in training and education, they can take it at their own pace. They don't have to sort of rush along and watch everything. They can stop, go back, and try new things, and go backwards and forwards, however they want to take it. This is part of the layers that we do. It's a sort of tutorial about the anatomy, and that's something that is actually we're adding to. In this case, it's an CGI animation that you can zoom into. There's also a voiceover that goes on there and tells you more about why the operation is taking place, what to look out for, and also any tips that you need to look out for. This is the exam that I was telling you about. This, as I say, this started off when we were trying to find out how successful virtual reality could be in training and in education. One of the side effects of what we found is that virtual reality can be one of the best ways of training or educating somebody, because the retention level of what people learn using virtual reality is between 75 and 80%. This is a feed from inside the patient. I won't dwell on that too long, but that's the actual feed that comes in. I said there was a third type of operation. There's also robotic operations, and that's something which is going to come more and more to the forefront over the next 5 to 10 years. This, in actual fact, is an expanded out view from one of our cameras. We use very high definition cameras to film the operation in 360. We also use other cameras to concentrate on other certain aspects of what's going on. The reason that surgery is very amazingly useful for virtual reality is that surgery takes place actually in 360. Then there are two aspects to what you need to do to become a surgeon. You also have to know how to do things technically correctly, but also you're the leader of a team. You have to know how your team is going to react and how you can interact with that team. And that team, in actual fact, is all around you. The patient, if you're the surgeon, the patient is in front of you. There's probably another doctor here or another surgeon, an assistant surgeon on the other side. There's an anaesthetist over there, and there are various nurses around, and they're based all around the room. So you have to know not only what you're doing physically, but also how you're connecting with the members of your team. That's a cognitive side of what you need for training and education. So what we tried to do with the Medical Realities platform is make it highly scalable. The reason we started off with surgery is because I met Professor Shafi Ahmed at a conference very much like this. And we started talking about how new technologies can help in medicine. We've got a great thing in the UK, it's called the NHS, the National Health Service. It's absolutely fantastic, but there's one big problem. It's huge, and it requires a lot of money. And it's not going to keep going unless we can find a way of capping the costs and making everything better and more achievable. One of the ways we can do that is using new technology. So when I started talking to Shafi, he was telling me about when he does training operations. He works at a brand new hospital called the Royal London Hospital. They spent £3 billion on building the hospital. It's only 2 years old. They have usually 300 medical students per year. When he does a physical training operation, he's only allowed to have 2 students in the operating theatre with him, which surprised me. And that, in actual fact, is a rule, not only in the UK, but also everywhere else, I've since found out. And I said to Shafi, well, this is ridiculous, because that means that 298 of your students don't get to see that training operation. And of course, once an operation is completed, that operation as a training asset, as a tool, is gone. It can't be used again. So this is ridiculous. We need to find some way of being able to scale it up. So that's why we started filming in 360. And by filming in 360, we were able to show it to the 300 students all at the same time. And they said, well, this is fantastic. For the first time, we can see properly what's going on, we can understand what's going on, and also we can hear what the surgeon and everybody else is saying properly. Because the two students that actually get to go into the theatre didn't actually stand next to the operation. They were asked to go to the back of the room. So they hardly saw anything at all. So they just got a vague impression of what was going on. We want to create a library of operations by world-class surgeons, the top surgeons in their field, so they can tell everybody how they do their operations. We want it to be immersive and interactive, and we're adding more immersivity and more interactivity as we go along. We want to make it global. I said before, 2/3 of the world's population don't have access to safe or affordable surgery, and that's something which has to change. How do you train surgeons in developing countries? How do you develop doctors to reach their full potential, and paramedics to do their job properly? And with virtual reality, we can reach anybody. Our system is usable anywhere and everywhere because it can be used on a mobile phone as well as on a laptop or a computer or using a head-mounted display. As I said, 75% plus retention rate of what people are being taught is phenomenal. And we've developed, over the last 2 years, what we call a rapid deployment pipeline. So we can film an operation today, and within 3 weeks, that will have become what we call a virtual reality training module. And that training module, as I say, is very, very richly and densely put together. It's not just 360 anymore, it's CGI animation, it's multiple cameras, it's using images like CRMs, X-rays. So that's important, because so far we've filmed over 100 operations. Our goal by the end of next year is to film 250 operations. But we don't think that's actually going to stop, because there are different types of operations and different needs for different types of operations around the world. As I was saying, in developing countries, it's a problem not having surgery. In actual fact, in those countries, 18 million people die a year because they don't have access to safe or affordable surgery. That's terrible. We need to be able to change that. And those 18 million people are dying not from complex surgery or not from the lack of complex surgery. It's actually from very, very simple surgery. Surgery that in Europe that we consider really, really sort of run-of-the-mill. That's surgery for appendicitis, appendectomies, births, C-section births, hernias, and more importantly, broken skin fractures, where somebody breaks their arm or breaks their leg, and it becomes a complicated fracture because it breaks the skin. Once it breaks the skin, you've got a big problem. If it's not treated properly, you get gangrene and you die. In actual fact, more people die now from not having safe or affordable surgery than from any communicable disease on the planet. That's the first time it's happened, ever. It's switched over. That's why we need to make a difference. One of the things that we're adding on to what we're doing, because this is an ongoing project, it's never going to stop, is that we teach people how to do the operations properly, we educate them how to do the operations properly, but now we're going to actually let them do the operations as well. So we're doing simulated CGI operations. To start off with, we're just doing simple procedures, but simple procedures that every doctor and every surgeon, and to that matter, every paramedic and nurse should know. And using virtual reality, they can practice again and again without actually harming any patients while they practice. So we feel this is actually going to be something which is going to expand out. And eventually, and I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but it's going to take 2 years or 5 years, we'll even be able to do complex operations. We're just waiting for the haptics to actually catch up with everything else. That's the one bit that we're missing at the moment, unfortunately, but there are a lot of companies working on haptics. And that's where you can see your hands. When you put the headset on, you can see your hands, you can see the patient in front of you, and when you reach over and pick up a scalpel, you feel that you picked up that virtual scalpel. And then when you use it, you're getting all the tactile feedback that you need. So that's going to be very, very, very exciting. And the next thing which also excites me, I talked about where we were using sort of chatbots to actually interact with the students. We're in actual fact, this is Professor Shafi Ahmed, my business partner. We're turning him into a virtual surgeon. He's going to become the world's virtual surgeon. Well, he is the world's first virtual surgeon. And not only will he be telling you how to do operations, but he'll be interacting with you as well. Because we found that people respond better if they can interact with something, even if it's an avatar, much better than just typing something in. Just under 2 years ago, we did the world's first live 360-degree operation, which was broadcast around the world. We, in actual fact, got 55,000 people in 142 different countries viewing what we were doing, 4,000 different cities around the world. And that on one day created 4.6 million tweets. So we know that there's a lot of interest out there, but we want to be able to reach out to people, not just via tweets and not just by social media, but also face-to-face. So Professor Shafi's avatar can, in actual fact, talk to as many people as we want, can answer as many questions. There's lots of things that we have to do and we have to catch up, but in actual fact, our initial tests are incredibly, amazingly well received. So, along the top there is just a sort of montage. Right in the middle is the fantastic team in London that's helped start this off. One of the things that we're really gratified about what we're doing is relevant everywhere. We're reaching out to hospitals, to surgeons, all around the world to get their expertise. We filmed in America, we filmed in Italy, we filmed in India, we filmed in Malta. Haven't yet filmed in Germany, but that's one of the things we would love to do. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to use virtual reality and what I call immersive virtual reality, something that you can interact with to help educate and train people. And as I said at the start, this isn't relevant just for medicine. This isn't relevant just for surgery. In fact, we probably couldn't have picked something more difficult if we tried. But we knew that if we could crack this, the similar ideas will be exactly the same for training and education. Whether you're putting together a car, a jet engine, or a human being, doesn't actually make any difference. So, I have to say, we're extremely excited about what we're doing. We're extremely excited about how this is going. And we think we've only just scratched the surface, but we're incredibly enthusiastic about how it's going and where it's going to lead to. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. We are actually going to continue this discussion here on the stage. Would you like to stay here?
Yes, of course.
We're going to bring 2 more people onto the stage. These 3 people are going to have a discussion about the power of these immersive technologies and for the future. I'd like to bring to the stage Professor Dr. Kai Buehler. He's a professor, tech entrepreneur, angel investor, and active advisor to startups. And I'd also like to introduce Andrea Raducan. She's the head of partnerships and VR training project manager at Interactive GmbH. And the 3 of them are going to have a hopefully interesting and lively discussion. So enjoy. Do you have enough water? Yes. Great. Get started and leave the stage up to you. Okay?
Yeah.
Have fun.
Thank you so much. Impressive talk. Thanks so much, Steve. Quite impressive numbers, and what you mentioned at the end there, how much social engagement was around it as well. Yeah. Andrea, love to hear maybe, what you guys are doing, and if you could introduce yourself, 2 or 3 minutes, and some of the projects you guys are currently working on. That'd be great.
Happy to do so. Thank you so much. And thank you again for sharing all the insights about your experience in learning and in training in such an important topic like medical one.
Thank you.
Andrea Raducan. I'm working at Active since 2.5 years. Our company is a startup based in Munich, and we're developing a VR training platform. It's an enterprise solution around the life cycle of training, so from creation of trainings to actual deployment, global deployment, and management of trainings. So I'm a little bit more from the enterprise sector, and myself, what I've been doing so far, already from the start of my journey at Active, I've been working together with companies like Volkswagen and Audi to create virtual reality trainings. And 2.5 years ago, there wasn't so much out there on the market. So what we started to do is, okay, we have some objectives, and we want to know how VR training can help and how to achieve this objective. So we looked around what is there that we can inspire ourselves from. Not so much. So that's how the journey started. We had to be creative and come up with a concept. And I was in charge of coming up with this concept, and together with the team, we brought a solution that proved very successful. And that was the base, let's say, of what came next. And since that project, we kept going with more implementations, with piloting, rollouts, and we're happy to see that VR trainings are ready to scale to some extent. So yeah, that's a bit of my background.
Cool, thank you. Well, I guess we heard a lot today about that VR learning or AR learning actually works. There were a lot of numbers quoted. You just quoted 75% retention rate. That's amazing. There's other studies out there in China, for example, also showing astrophysics students, up to 40% retention rate, 90% less failure rate if they use VR in training and coaching. We actually, my department, we ran a study as well with over 35 companies, 150 million plus in revenues, annual sales. And we asked them, are you guys deploying VR and AR? And what areas are you using it in? And what effects are you seeing? And interestingly enough, over 30% already use and deploy VR, especially the larger firms. And they're seeing a 5 to 10% improvement on the bottom line. So they're actually making money or improving their bottom line by using VR and AR applications. And the area they're using it most in is actually coaching, training, and learnings. So, I guess what you guys have been citing as well. I would be interested in, though, I think we've heard that it works on the learning side and that people remember it a lot better. Does it also work economically for you guys? I mean, do you really guys see the uptick and the demand for it? For example, just the other day I was reading on VentureBeat that we're still not there yet for VR and AR application for the mass adoption market, that it's still experimental budgets from companies. Gartner calls it, we're now the trough of disillusionment for that whole industry. I just wanted to get you guys' take. I mean, is there a lot of demand for it? And give us maybe some projects that you guys are working on that work economically too for those other companies you're working with.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. And I think there are two things that go hand in hand here, because basically it doesn't matter how good the content that is that anybody creates. The hardware has to be as good as the content, and it has to be good, but also has to be affordable as well. And I think that for various reasons, these two things are not quite happening in sync. It's getting there, and it's great to see that Oculus are in actual fact really powering ahead with this, and their Santa Cruz has now turned into Oculus Quest, and it's going to be available next year at $400, and that's going to be a standalone headset with 6 degrees of movement. It's going to be fantastic. The Oculus Go actually works very well, and in actual fact Walmart just purchased 17,000 Oculus Go's to train their staff. So it's starting to happen, but it's partly because of the problems with the hardware. Our platform has to work with so many different types of hardware it actually does make things difficult. But we have to have it working on everything because there's no one standard yet, or there's no one dominant type of headset out there.
Always reminds me a little bit, like 10 years ago, I always used to go to these shows, the mobile industry shows, and they always said, next year is going to be the year of mobile, next year is going to be the year of mobile, and then suddenly it was there. Sorry, Andrea, your take, is the market already there? Are you guys seeing a lot of uptake, and what are the projects you guys are working on?
So to build up on top of your opinion, I think, yeah, hardware is definitely important, and the fact that the hardware becomes more affordable will boost the adoption of VR. What I see as well, and what we see from the demands of our customers, is that somehow their questions are becoming more clear. Yeah. So this is how things have evolved from what can I do with VR to I want to do this. Just tell me what does it cost, or what do we need to do to get there. So this point, education, understanding of the technology, of its limitations, has definitely improved, and this can only be a good sign that people finally, or not finally, because there's a lot to learn still about the technology and how to use it, but there's more and more understanding of what is possible and how to use the technology.
I think that's very true, because I think that when we first got into virtual reality in 2012, we had to explain every single detail to all our potential clients. It's got easier and easier, and really, probably about 2 years ago, I have to now spend less time explaining what VR is or what augmented reality is to clients and potential clients. So they're getting it. It's filtering through into the background all the time, and I think that's really going to help. One of the other things that we're doing, one of my other companies called Amplified Robot, is actually using augmented reality and virtual reality for children, for training children about reading and writing and arithmetic. So there are lots of different ways in which these new immersive technologies can help, and I think that it's interesting that the children get it exactly the same way, that the children have no problem with touchscreen devices. They just take it up and they use it. They have no problem with virtual reality. They have no problem with augmented reality. It's there. We can use it. That's the future. And very soon, AR and VR are definitely going to be the total futures.
All right, good. Nice quote there. You both just mentioned content production. I guess that's always a bit of the bottleneck, I guess, also when it comes to training applications and immersive experience. How do you guys handle this? Is it always, you always have to start from scratch, or is there a way to scale it or syndicate content? I don't know. Andrea, you want to start?
Yeah, so that's a very important, let's say, I would call it pain point these days, because you see that it works and it's worth investing, but you, as a company, you want to scale the production and you want to deploy it globally. So the question is, how do you do that? And this is also where we jump in, because we thought about the whole journey and we looked at what are the parts where we can actually bring value to the companies. So what we are offering, for example, at Active is, among others, an SDK for content creation, so that you don't have to start from scratch as a developer every time, but you can reuse a code, you can reuse assets, and this is one way you can do it. Another way is, for example, having a concept, a method that is more or less a standard, so that you can apply it for different use cases or for different training modules, and this helps, of course, on the reusability path. And both combined together with the advancements of the software as well, I'm pretty sure the software or the content creation itself will the cost will decrease.
In what areas are you guys using that in? Is it, you mentioned you're working for enterprise. Can you give us some names and setups and settings that you guys deploy that software?
Yeah, so one of our biggest customers is Volkswagen Group, and there was an announcement this year that they will train 10,000 employees based on our platform. What does it mean? They're building 32 training applications using our software. On one hand side to create those, and on the other hand to deploy those globally, because it's important also to make them available to the right target group at the right training center, the right module. So we're taking care of this whole journey. And this is one example how we're supporting enterprises.
How about you, Steve?
Yes, one of the things that we found out, I touched on it briefly in my talk, is that we created a medical realities training platform. That platform is actually, in fact, a template as well. And we're going to lease out that template to other individuals and other organizations. And the template is basically, you can take anything, whether it's film, whether it's CGI, whether any asset, and you can put it into the virtual reality domain, and it works together. And that's a very important thing of what we're doing, because we can't produce everything. We need other people to produce good virtual reality content, and that's what we're trying to do. If you can actually use WordPress, you can use our template, and that was our plan. So at the moment, it's being mainly used by universities and academics.
Okay, great. Given the advanced time frame, maybe just, and since this panel is called, I believe, The Future of, so you just mentioned the Oculus Quest action. I think there was an announcement yesterday that Oculus Connect now that the Quest will actually allow now for integration of 2D and 3D objects into the feed, and you can interact with them, you know, which is great on a technical side. What other components do you see maybe also then in your field? What is the future of immersive VR training? Where do you see this going? I mean, you mentioned, for example, the virtual, the hologram almost, right? The virtual surgeon.
Yeah.
What other future do you see for us?
Well, again, I also touched on haptic technology, because that's actually very, very important to us. So I think we're waiting for the haptic industry to catch up with what we want and what we need. I think another thing that actually they trailed at the Oculus convention was a new camera made by Red, which in actual fact enables you to actually have 6 degrees of movement within a filmed piece of material, which is amazing. That's actually going to really help what we do. So I think those are the type of things which I see are going to sort of drive things forward. And I think that the other things that we're looking at is obviously the voice control. That's actually going to help us as well. We're starting to use that a little bit because it's a lot easier for you to actually tell the headset what you want to see rather than point and touch or sort of align a cursor. So I think that's actually going to be something that's really important. But we're combining as well artificial intelligence and blockchain a little bit further down the line, because what we're doing is we're actually going to create what we've put together already with certain universities so that we're going to become part of their teaching curriculums. So by this time next year, we'll have a number of universities around the world where you can actually take part of your curriculum in virtual reality and get credits and passes.
Great. Andrea, where do you think this is going in terms of VR learning? What exciting developments do you guys have in store?
I think everything that you mentioned is quite exciting, and it's definitely going to move into that direction, and artificial intelligence is going to play a role, and deep learning. In the moment, I see a lot of experimentation still, and I see the need of finding some standards and finding what works and what doesn't, and really pinning that in a way so that people can adopt easier those standards. And in content, standards are important because we want people to have a good experience in there. So once those standards are set, then we can ensure that those people get, the mass, let's say, gets a good experience with the VR. And that's one probably of the biggest risk in terms of adoption. So what we're doing in there, it's enforcing or empowering people to find the standards and then enforcing, allowing them to enforce the standards across their different business units, or if we think about enterprises, that's how we see it's going to, let's say, scale. And on the other hand, the more people can build content, the more content there will be, and if the content is good quality, then again, the scaling factor. So this is where we're moving. We're moving into gathering a community that can develop good quality content and bring the value of VR and VR learning into a broader market.
I think that's a smart approach, as you said, always the 3 C's, right? The content drives the community and eventually it drives the commerce. So I think that's hopefully the right way forward. All right, well, I guess that's it from us. Thank you very much.